here we are back again. This is Alison with Holistic Recovery, and I have a very special guest here. Her name is Sheri Schreiber. She is the author of Do You Love to Be Needed or Need to Be Loved? A book. I've been following Sheri's work for many years, and it's wonderful that we're connected now in this way. And Sheri, could you just tell viewers a little more about who you are and what you do?
Wow. First and foremost, I'm essentially retired now from my wellness practice. But I say essentially because that's how it feels to me. And I went back to school at 41 to become a psychotherapist. But in the process of that, I found schooling to be really lacking. I had already ironed out a lot of my own wrinkles, my emotional wrinkles by that time. And I experienced my going through my BA degree and my MA as kind of a waste of time and energy and money. Um, and and then before I graduated with my master's degree, I um, I had serious doubts that I wanted to work as a licensed clinician because I didn't have. Uh, I was sort of marching to a different drum than my peers and my colleagues, and I I didn't really see the value in working in those mainstream kinds of ways. Um, but I took both my state board exams. I finally passed the first one. I was getting ready to take the second one when I met with a serious accident back in 2007, which made it impossible for me to study for and sit for my second state board exam again and hope to pass it. So I surrendered my application for licensure, and I've been healing people ever since. But being very clear on my website and in my conversations with people that I do not work as a state licensed clinician. I was working to help people heal, literally learn how to heal themselves for many years, but never misled them to think that they were working with a licensed therapist. Um, and truth be told, I've always done this work. I mean, strangers would stop me in supermarkets and tell me their life story or talk to me about physical ailments they had and want answers for. And my friends all called me Dr. Schreiber for many years before I ever even thought of returning to academia. And so it seems like this has always been a calling for me. And of course, I was a bartender for 5 years. I was a hairstylist for more years than I even want to admit to. And don't you tell your hairstylist everything when you're sitting there for, getting a trim? I mean, So it seems like the careers that I chose or the vocations I chose were just really a part of this, in some way, this inclination, this natural organic inclination and talent that I had. So I finally decided to legitimize it at 41 years old and went back to school, which, as I've said, I think I'd have been better off buying a DSM-4 at the time and just reading it on my spare time.
Right. I've heard that what you learn in school is basically how to diagnose people, right?
Not even that. No, they don't teach it that. No, I had to kind of learn on the job about that.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, if you work as an intern in the psychotherapeutic field and you work at a clinic, um, uh, I think they focus more on diagnosis, and I was afraid to do that because I just didn't feel well versed in that arena when I finished school. But I did start a private practice internship, and because it was interesting and important for me to learn the various diagnoses, and I wanted to learn about meds too. I did. So I became an excellent diagnostician over the years that I was working.
And so
But
what's the difference between, you're like, I'm not a psychotherapist. What's the difference between that work and the work that you've done with clients over the
but the
years?
work I've done is experiential. It's not cerebral. Um, I will teach people about their pain, but I don't go exploring it with them and analyzing it with them and searching for the baseline of where that pain started and why it's still here and all that other shit. I just don't do that. I, I think that's a bloody waste of time and energy and money for clients. So I I fashioned self-worth building tools for me in my probably mid to late 20s. And when I after I surrendered my application for licensure years and years ago, um, I I started giving people the tools that I had invented for me to help me learn how to rebuild myself from the ground up and build self-worth and build confidence. And they had nothing to do with psychotherapy. Psychotherapy is the exploration and analysis of emotional pain. My work was to get people out of their frigging heads and into their bodies and get them experiencing their pain on a cellular level in the body and learning how to endure and tolerate it, and to where they get to a place where they would stop fearing it and dreading it and running away from it with whatever addiction, you know, was their drug of choice or their activity of choice. So you can virtually heal and end addiction if you can teach people how to feel their pain in their body and their nothingness and their emptiness and their core void and their even happiness and glee. I mean, these are totally foreign feelings for people in recovery through the kind of work I was doing. And that was the hardest part of my work, was to help them tolerate what real joy feels like, because this was a foreign feeling to them, completely out of their wheelhouse to experience. And it freaks people out. They don't know what to do with it. They get anxious around it. It's like, I'm feeling so good, but oh, this is triggering me because I know the other shoe's going to drop. Something terrible is waiting for me around the corner, because that was their childhood experience. The moment they felt relatively stable, even maybe light or good for a moment or two, the rug got ripped out from under them and they got dropped on their head as children. So in order to stave off that terrible, devastating disappointment, they learned to push away happiness and calm and contentment and joy and not trust it.
Yes. And sometimes,
I don't know if that answers your question.
oh, 100%. It does. I mean, sometimes it feels like our feelings they're so intense, they're going to kill us.
Yes, for sure. And we're afraid they will.
Yeah. And then we end up kind of killing ourselves as a way to avoid them.
That's right. Yeah. I remember the first time I started doing feeling work for myself. And I had been seeing a counselor. This is many years ago. I mean, I must have been in my 30s. And she said, Sherry, the next time you feel like you're going to act out self-destructively, I want you to just sit and see what memories, thoughts, or feelings are coming up for you. And I did. I used to be a compulsive eater. I mean, well into my 40s. And I remember heading to my kitchen, probably to stave off some emptiness or boredom. And I thought, no, I'm going to try and do what she said to do. And I just sat on my sofa and and I just sat there and I just let a litany of feelings run through me. And I swear to you, Alison, I thought I was going to die. I mean, the pain was so excruciating. I thought I was going to die for sure. I thought, this is it. I'm going to die. And when I got to the other side of that really dark, uncomfortable tunnel, and I was still breathing and I was still alive, I was really kind of shocked. But it changed everything for me. That one feeling experience changed everything for me, because I no longer had a compulsion for eating and for taking in food when I felt uncomfortable. And it also changed how I got involved with men radically. You know, I was no longer going off visual attraction and sexual attraction and, you know, diving on in. I was really waiting and watching and discerning who they really were before I'd let them into my bed.
Mm-hmm.
So two things really got to pivot and change for me in that one initial experience. And I kept doing this over and over again, and just feeling my way through life as opposed to thinking my way through life, and experiencing these very difficult emotions and ickiness. And I found that I started feeling stronger inside. There was like something solid happening that wasn't there before. So psychotherapy doesn't do that for you. A psychotherapist will tell you, perhaps over and over again, to really stay with your feelings, to really feel your feelings, to really be in your feelings. But they don't teach you how to do it. They tell you to do it, but they don't teach you how to actually be in your body with your emotions and learn to tolerate them. And I found that deep breathing and self-soothing, rubbing the place that is hurting with the hand to the body, it was really, I wish I'd had that when I did my first feeling exercise, because it would have been easier for me. But I just have always urged my clients to get the fuck out of your head and feel what's in your body. Get the fuck out of your, I'm famous for this by now. Get the fuck out of your head. Get out of your fucking head and feel what's in your body. And let's deep breathe together. And you may call me anytime for interim care to help you learn how to just hold these feelings in your body and not go immediately into the brain to try and analyze them. So I worked very differently from psychotherapists, very radically different. And people healed here.
Mm-hmm.
They grew emotionally because we were doing feeling work and developing a whole repertoire of emotions they'd hidden from and run from and avoided lifelong. And they started feeling a certain solidarity inside, and a certain wholeness started growing. And they felt more grounded and stable and centered with themselves. And they started not being afraid to be alone all the time, you know, and so desperate to be with somebody or be in a relationship because and I also stopped them from beating up on themselves. That had to be stopped and halted. Because every client who's ever come through my practice, my wellness practice, was, these people would self-mutilate emotionally. It was terrible.
Yeah, you know, David Bedrick, he's a thought person, a thought leader in our course, in this course, and he has this great quote. He says, you know, when you take when you take punches at yourself, you never miss a single swing.
That's right.
You know.
And you can't, you know, when somebody else is calling you names and saying terrible things to you, you can at least tell yourself, well, that's not really me. You can defend against your attacker. But when you're beating the shit out of yourself, you can't defend against your attacker.
Mm-hmm.
You can't.
Yeah.
You know?
So a lot of your work, Sherry, you know, in this book in particular, which is amazing, and I suggest that everyone pick it up. Sherry has a really kind of unconventional writing style that's very entertaining to read. And Sherry's website, gettingbetter.com, actually, is this correct if I say this is one of the most frequented sites for people trying to get out of relationships or heal from relationships with borderline personality disordered or other types of disordered.
Well, I don't know what the percentages are or the ratios, but I can tell you that people have for years now told me that when they landed on my website and started reading my articles about borderline personality disorder and what you go through in one of those relationships and what it does to you internally, they've said, man, I've read books on this topic, I've read other websites, I've read other web materials, and nothing spoke to me like your articles did. I felt like you were a fly on the wall in my relationship the entire time I was in it. So that's really marvelous to hear, because what it says to me is I've captured the essence of how torturous and tormenting these relationship experiences really are to people. I mean, I had numerous men calling me crying on the phone. I'm a total stranger to them. And I pick up the phone and I say hello, and they're crying, they're sobbing because they're in so much emotional agony. So, yeah, several people dedicated their books written about their experience with a borderline to me. They wrote me and said, "I'd like to send you a copy of my book. I've dedicated my book to you. Your online materials helped me so much." And I went, you know, and I had to find a gracious way to say, "That's so sweet, and thank you for your generous and kind offer, but no, thank you," because what do I need all these books sitting around my house for? But it's flattering, and it felt like an honor to know that these were people who never ever called me for help, one-on-one help. They never called me, they never spoke to me, but they landed on my articles and they read those articles, and those articles gave them apparently clarity and some degree of resolution that they needed and wanted, and they were able to really begin their healing journey. So I'm jazzed about that.
Yeah.
You know, I feel wonderful about that.
Yeah, I mean, they're fun too. They're fun to read, and one of the things that you talk about, is like we tend to like split off from our darker emotions,
Yes.
right? And so when we get split off and we don't allow, we repress, I guess you could say, this all of these aspects of just our humanness.
Anger, rage, jealousy, envy, um, um, sadness, grief, frustration. Yeah, we just wrap them up tight, bury them real deep in the ground, never to be brought out again.
Right.
Yeah.
And then
Hatred is one.
oh, sorry, what were you going to say?
Hatred is one that we judge harshly and say, "Oh no, no, I shouldn't be feeling that."
Right. We want to be holier than thou. We're the caretaker. We're the caregiver. We need to be liked, right? Because if
Want
someone
to be Christ-like.
Christ-like, yes, and if someone attacks us, then it's going to mirror all the ways we attack ourselves all day, and so we can't handle that. And you talk about how that leads repression, especially of our sexuality as well, right?
Yes, yes.
The animal sexuality that humans possess.
Yeah, their primal selves. Yeah.
It
Because
leads to addiction and it leads to these relationships, right?
indeed. Oh yeah. Yeah, they're like precursors. So what's important to know is that both the borderline disordered person and the codependent, or the person with narcissism in their makeup who believes they can fix and rescue anybody and fix anything, um, both struggle with exactly the same core trauma injuries from infancy and early childhood onward. So they've both dissociated from their emotions, a whole litany of emotions in their emotional repertoire. They both dissociated from them. So they have this in common. The codependent is attracted to someone who needs them and who requires rescuing and guiding and helping and saving, and the borderline, it just wants to be able to rely on somebody to meet their primal needs of infancy that were never met by mother.
Yeah, I mean, I dated a borderline, and it was like he was a baby, like a newborn baby inside of a grown man's body. And it was like his way of navigating through the world was exactly like a child,
An
an
infant, yes.
infant. And
And his narcissism and his lack of capacity for empathy, you know, was only concerned, just like with an infant, with getting his own needs met, however that could happen for him. So
and
this
this
is,
is an epidemic in our country.
yeah, epidemic for sure. And there's certain parts of the world where it's even more prevalent. This borderline personality disorder stuff and codependency too. When you have people who need to be needed, there always have to be people that show up to meet that need for them. In other words, there always have to be needy people that show up in their life so that they get to reinforce their sense of self and their sense of worth and their sense of importance by being somebody who's needed. And by the way, the constellation for the codependent is they're all about, if you need me, I don't have to worry about you leaving me. If you need me, you're dependent on me. So I don't ever have to worry about you leaving me. I don't have to worry about losing you. If you need me, you'll never leave me. So that, I speak to that in my book.
And then what have you seen? I mean, I've lived it. I'm sure tons of people watching this have lived it as well because it is such an epidemic. But um, what tends to happen inside of these relationships over time, and like how do we recover from them?
Well, there's an article on my website called Haven't We Met Before? The Borderline Narcissist Couple. And I don't know if you've read that piece or not, but it goes into the intricacies of that dynamic. And essentially, you have the narcissist or slash codependent, okay, who needs to be needed because that's what forms their entire identity and sense of worth. And this started for them in infancy with their mothers and throughout early childhood with their mothers. They couldn't get their own needs met by mother, their own emotional needs for warmth, touch, holding, tenderness, looks of adoration, in it from her eyes into theirs. And so they grow up feeling inadequate, never good enough, unlovable. Something must be wrong with me. Because don't forget, we bond for 9 months with our mothers in utero. So for 9 months while we're gestating inside of her body, and developing, we're bonding with her. We're hearing her voice and getting very familiar with the cadence of her speech, the way she enunciates her words. I sound exactly like my mother, the way I talk, exactly like her. And God rest her soul. And we hear her breathing and her heartbeat, and these rhythmic sounds lull us to sleep while we're inside of her body. And we co-experience her emotional states. So if she's sad, or if she's angry, or if she's discontent, or if she's anxious a lot of the time, we absorb those emotions as well. So we're simultaneously feeling those emotions at the same time she is. So with a mother who's anxious a lot, who's fearful a lot, who never feels safe in her world, we come out of the womb with anxiety disorder. We come out of the womb with it because this is the predominant emotion we're exposed to, you see, for 9 months.
And then we have to learn how to feel all of somebody else's feelings, kind of, that we now are. Well, so then I noticed there's a pattern of where we get almost trained to hook into other people's pain. And
Because we're divorced from our own.
because
Yeah.
we're divorced from our own, because we weren't allowed to have those dark emotions that you were talking about that would actually allow us to own our
Well, to receive
perceptions of
comfort
another
and care
person.
for them when we were young. To receive comfort and care for our dark emotions when we were little. Nobody fucking noticed them.
Mm-hmm.
So there we were having to carry those all on our own without any comfort, without any soothing, without any care, without anybody noticing, because our parents were divorced from their emotions. So a
Mm-hmm.
mother cannot even intuit her baby's needs or what his cries mean. She can't learn to intuit that if she's dissociated from her own emotions and
Mm-hmm.
she's thinking her way through life as opposed to feeling her way along. Your senses come are feelings. They're extrasensory feelings. so, so it's really like a mishmash train wreck.
And you were telling me that these treatment programs, I guess, that you would put people through, where you're helping them learn how to tap into these part of themselves they've been running from their whole lives. Um, can you tell, like you said, it took how long could it take you before you could, have people moving out of this way of being, this dysfunctional way of
I
being?
always try to get people well in under a year. I always try to get them well, whole, healthy, strong, vibrant, self-contained, confident, and happy, and capable of attaching fully to another in a nourishing and lasting way. I always tried to get this work done in under a year. Now, some clients were with me longer than that.
Mm-hmm.
And, not everybody's cut from the same cookie cutter.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure I wasn't a fit the way I worked for everyone that I worked with. And they certainly, some of them weren't a fit for my methods. But I did the best I could with everybody I took on. And some people just couldn't shift their paradigm from thinking and analyzing to feeling. This was incredibly prevalent among my psychotherapy clients. Um, I said that wrong. My clients who were psychotherapists, licensed clinical psychologists, were just flocking to my practice.
Mm-hmm.
And because they couldn't get what they needed within their community from people who did the kind of work that they did. So it was really fascinating. And I had two emotions when I hear from a psychologist or a psychotherapist. Um, and one was, well, this feels flattering because I make it very clear that I don't work as a licensed clinician. On my website, I made it crystal clear when I was doing that work. And yet they were calling me for help. And the other feeling I had was, oh, fuck, here we go again. Because they were the toughest clients to work with. You could not get them out of their head. You couldn't get them to stop analyzing every feeling that came along
Mm-hmm.
and just building narratives around those emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So to teach somebody like that how to just be in their body and feel and deep breathe and self-soothe with the hand to the body where they felt the discomfort, and me being with them in that exercise, it, it was like it was near impossible.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. Sometimes, like, the smarter you are, it's almost the harder to just be and heal.
Well, smart, yes, brilliant, yes, bright, yes, but so many of them are borderline disordered. I never worked with a psychologist client who wasn't a borderline or who didn't have significant BPD features. Never did.
And what are BPD features?
Well, the heart and core of borderline personality disorder, and people have formed some stigmatic opinions about BPD, which I don't try to promote. My articles are really speaking to people who are bleeding from every pore and trying to survive that experience.
Mhm.
But I don't hate borderlines. I've never hated borderlines. I probably wouldn't have had a full thriving practice internationally without borderlines. and um, eh, but but the core of it, the heart of it, is a lack of development. So these people, their emotional growth is stunted. So they're really kind of stuck at a very early age, say around the age of 3. It's like toddlers in adult bodies, like you got to experience in your relationship with that male.
Lucky me, lucky me. Yes.
Well, yeah, but you're young enough. It's happened early enough for you that I mean, I get calls from women in their 60s and 70s who got involved with one of these people, and just their whole world was turned upside down. So
And you get addicted to them.
yeah, you've at least got recovery time, but or time to recover, I should say. But the lack of emotional development also leaves one with a lack of moral development,
Mm.
because the two go hand in hand. If you don't have emotional development, there's no way you can have moral development. The two are entwined. So, imagine the capacity that a toddler might have for relating to your feelings, your difficulties, your problems, your needs. If you were talking to, say, a niece or a nephew that was maybe 3 years old, and you wanted to explain what you were going through, would they be able to comprehend and ingest what you were saying, and integrate and understand what you were telling them? Of course not. Of course not. We don't expect toddlers to have empathy for us, right? I mean, that's absurd. That's utterly absurd. So there's a lack of empathy, there's a lack of impulse control, just like with a toddler. I want my chocolate cake and I want it now, or I want my cookie and I want it now, and if I don't get it, I'm throwing a temper tantrum. A lack of boundaries. There's no sense of healthy boundaries. And people write me on Facebook all the time and, want information and answers from me. And they write me these long, extended, protracted, direct mails looking for clarity and understanding. And I cut it off right away. I just say, look, I'm not here to do this with you within this venue. If you're really interested in learning more, call me and we'll discuss the possibility of a consultation where I can teach you about this stuff. But no boundaries, none whatsoever, no empathy, and emotionally underdeveloped. So, with the borderline growing up and the narcissist or slash codependent growing up with a sense of certain feelings and emotions are bad and wrong because they feel bad in the body. And I always got punished for expressing those when I was little. These people don't develop emotionally. They're stuck at a really early age of their emotional development. And so the task then is growing them into their chronological age. And that's kind of an interesting process and kind of tricky. And if you don't know what the fuck you're doing in context of feeling work so that they can start to develop a full repertoire of emotions that they're no longer afraid of, and they're no longer dreading, and they're no longer criticizing and crucifying themselves for having, then you've got a shot at rebuilding a person from the ground up and having them really leave their borderline traits behind, or the codependent traits behind. Because that's what it takes. It takes emotional growth work. Nothing else. Psychotherapy doesn't touch this stuff.
Mhm.
It really doesn't.
Yeah, and I mean, you're in there for a decade, and you're still having all the same problems and reliving the same experience over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, in the
Still
book,
getting involved with the same kinds of people because you're chasing after what you didn't get with mother. So these people that come along, they give you all this adoration and adulation in the beginning, and they
Mm-hmm.
love bomb you.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry to keep cutting you off, but
Oh no, if you're on a roll, go for it. This is important what you're saying because this is part of the pattern.
okay, they love bomb you, and they're like, they don't even know you. They barely know you. You've been dating for maybe a few days to a week or so, and they're already saying, I love you. I never want to be without you. Well, you can't love somebody you really don't know as yet. You can't. You can feel infatuation for them. You can feel infatuated with them, but you cannot love somebody you really don't know. So they come at you so strong and they love bomb you, and you get all this attention from them, sometimes unwanted attention even, to where it almost feels suffocating. And they're texting you all day long and calling you all day long and all this other shit. And there's a part of you, because you didn't get the kind of love, adoration, attention, and affection you needed in infancy and early childhood from your mommy, to where you could grow up feeling fully confident that you were lovable and good enough. This attention, while it may feel a little suffocating and intrusive, feels kind of wonderful too. Because you're going, well, maybe I am lovable after all. This person thinks that I hung the moon and the stars. This person treats me like I can walk on fucking water. I must be okay. Maybe my parents were wrong about me. Maybe I am, after all, lovable and good enough. And that's the trap.
Because then who that other person really is eventually shows up. And the second you don't meet their need, they will show their ugly at you.
Or the second they feel a little bored, or the second they feel a little unexcited within the relationship dynamic, or the second that the waiter at the restaurant you take them to for dinner flirts with them, or the second they feel a little flat, or lifeless, or sad, or depressed, or whatever. You're the scapegoat for all that for them. It's your fault they're feeling those things. You are supposed to rescue them from all those dark, difficult emotions. How come you're not doing your job better?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
The
Oh,
addiction comes, well, now I need to save them from this emotion, right? For the codependent, right? And then you get trapped in their
trying to fix it for them.
chaos.
Yeah, trying to fix it for them. And let me bend over backwards to try and please you and make you happy and shower you with love and gifts and presents and everything else, and try and gain your approval again and get you back, get myself back into your good graces again. And it's, borderlines are a bottomless pit. You can never fill that well.
Mm-hmm.
You can never fill it. It's like having a well with a huge fracture at the bottom. You pour the water in and in and in, and it never fills up.
Yep, don't I know it? And then it ends up sucking everything out of your life, and then your life turns into shambles.
Well, your life was in shambles to begin with, is what you
Mm-hmm.
don't recognize. But it took this person to come along and turn it upside down and inside out to make you realize all the pain that you put off for so many years.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, totally, totally.
Yeah, you really weren't in a solid, great place to begin with. Oh, you pulled yourself up by the bootstraps, and you talked yourself into feeling good about yourself, and you told yourself, I really do love myself, because I'm repeating this mantra over and over and over again, and at some point I'm going to start to believe it a little bit. And you've gotten yourself powerful and strong and competent and confident, but it's not really genuine in the core. It hasn't seated itself genuinely, because you're still dependent on mirroring and validation from other people to feel okay about yourself.
Yeah. Do you need to be loved? Do
You'd
you
love
love
for
to
this
be
to be
needed
like,
or need to be loved?
Yeah, good book. And people can download it as a Kindle version or something like that if they don't want to buy the book. I'm a book person. I used to read a lot voraciously when I was younger, self-help books and so on and so forth, and novels galore. But these days I don't read very much. I don't know. My needs changed around that. But this book has over 100 chapters, and each chapter is only like a page or two long. So it's really a page turner. It's easy to read. But I caution people, I go, listen, if you're going to buy this book, only read one chapter per day. Only read at the most two. Only read a few pages per day. And then ask yourself, what's this material trying to say to me? What's it trying to teach me about me? Take it slow, ingest it along the way. Because, if you just whiz through the book, which it's tempting to do, you won't get the real value out of it.
And sure, I just opened up on a page about sobriety in here. And, with this course, I 100% acknowledge that there are certain things that certain people have to just not engage with, in order to keep that baseline of wellness in their life. And I honor that. And I also have, I have personally problems with the way the addiction community pushes utter and complete sobriety as like the only path, because it
Are you saying abstinence?
abstinence, yes, abstinence. And it's so self-punishing. It's leads to more
Deprivation based?
repression. Yes, ping-ponging from extremes, because no one wants to be like that. No one can stay. And even like the yogic stuff is like it too, when you're just trying to be so freaking holier than thou and
Yep.
only eat your mung beans and fast for 40 days. And if you do your green juice diet, and if you do, it's all part of this pathology that we're talking about and touching.
I think of these people as fanatics, and I think of them as desperately trying to relieve themselves of pain in whatever manner they can think to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And um, that which we fear is that which we attract.
Mm-hmm.
Because whatever we fear, we can envision, right? I mean, unless it's some amorphous thing, we just have generalized anxiety disorder, which I talk about in my anxiety course online. But overcoming anxiety. But generally speaking, we can always picture what we're afraid of. So the minute you picture something, you envision it, you give it power, you give it life force, and you attract it to you. Fear is such a strong emotion that, boy, if we're afraid of something, we bring it right to us.
Mm-hmm.
So I've heard of people that go on macrobiotic diets because maybe there's cancer in the family and they're terrified of getting cancer, and they eat so pristinely and healthily, and they end up getting cancer. Why? Because their focus is on cancer every single day. I don't want to get cancer. I don't want to get cancer. Well, the universe and the subconscious don't understand the symbol for don't. All they hear is, I want to get cancer. I want to get cancer. Cancer, cancer, cancer. That's what I'm thinking of. That's what I'm envisioning. That's what I'm afraid of. That's what I'm drawing to me. So this is very, very common. And I always tell people, don't focus on what you don't want. Focus on what you do want. I'm getting healthier every day. I am vibrant. I'm alive. I'm in good shape. Uh, I'm not aging as a lot of people do. Focus on the positive. Give yourself those positive messages instead of, I don't want this or that.
Mm-hmm.
What's the opposite of what you don't want? Give your attention and focus to that instead. Because metaphysically, that's what you're creating.
Right. Like anti-fascism just creates more fascism. Anti-war just creates more war. Yeah. Yep. Great. Well, we're gonna have to start closing up, even though I could just talk to you forever. Sherry, is there anything that we haven't really talked about that you feel inspired to express? I think your book is a really great place for people to dive deeper into, the way that you treat these kind of things and interpret them and put words to it.
Let me just say this. My book helps you understand why you're in the predicament you are, why you've never been able to attain real success, why you've never been able to form lasting, nourishing, healthy attachments, why you've gone through life not feeling confident. None of these things are your fault. None of these things. This started for you as a baby, as a newborn. And we wonder about BPD, what causes it. Rape doesn't cause it. And in working with core damaged people, I realized that how these issues play out in our life, codependency and borderline personality disorder, it had to start, it's so universal. It had to start very, very, very early in life. So what happened to us in the first stages of our life that created these dysfunctional traits in us? And the book plumbs that and explores that explicitly. And I talk about the deficits in the psychotherapeutic community, and in the book, and I talk about, and there are serious deficits there, and I talk about um, the core injuries that happened to us that made us feel unlovable and not good enough. And I speak to what people went through during their healing process with me, and the phases of healing that they had to go through in order to get to the other side of their pain and shift their paradigm completely. So the book really covers a lot of ground, even though it's a skinny little book. But I'm just trying to enlighten people and help them know that whatever you're struggling with in your life, it ain't your fault. It's not on you. And if your parents are disappointed with you or they disapprove of you, that's not on you. That's on them, because you didn't get parented well enough and correctly enough. And you didn't get loved the way you should have gotten loved as an adorable, perfect, sweet little child. And that's all I want to say about that.
Thank you. Yeah. I was always like, Mom, it's your fault I'm like this. And she's like, no, it's not. It's your, and another thing I say too often is that, if you're wondering why you're broken, you weren't born broken. Someone broke you.
That's right. None of us were born broken, darling. We don't come into this world codependent or borderline disordered. We don't come in that way. These are not genetically inherited disorders or diseases. Depression can be inherited. Mood disorders can be inherited. But addiction is not inherited.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's cultivated.
Wonderful. Well, thank you
And
so
so
much.
are these other disorders. These are cultivated. These are nurture issues. These are not nature issues.
Hmm. Yeah, big distinction there, right? And it's good because we can fix them, right?
I have a little ADD, I came in with that.
And
Didn't figure it out until my probably late 40s, but I came in with some ADD. Okay, so that can be genetically passed on, but this other stuff, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
and for treatment communities to treat this like it's a part of your nature, to me feels like a crime. Like how low the recovery rate is, which is one of the big reasons why this course exists.
Are you talking about addiction recovery?
Addiction recovery, yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. People go back to these clinics over and over and over and over and over again because they're not working to balance brain chemistry while you're there.
Mhm.
You've got to balance brain chemistry in these terribly depressed people, or these people with bipolar disorder, these people with ADD. You've got to balance their brain chemistry, otherwise they cannot hold the work and make good use of it.
Mhm.
And I say this in one of my articles, I think it's my addiction article. I speak to that, the inadequacies in recovery clinics. It's terrible.
Oh, and they'll spend a pretty penny on them too.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. It's criminal what goes on in this world.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for this time.
No, thank you. And I'm going to include, with your permission, in this module, a link to one of your videos around the breathing exercises that you do.
Absolutely. Yeah. Heal your pain from the outside in with heavy breathing. That one?
That
Yeah.
one. That one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Because when I found Sherry's work, I wasn't, I had done all the talk psychotherapy. I could analyze my shit to death. I could have told you what happened on Thanksgiving when I was 12, Christmas when I was 14, what my teacher did to me, all of these stories. And I didn't realize that for my own self, that a lot of these emotions that felt so scary and so dangerous were coming from the womb, were coming from a place before I even had words to even know how to describe what is going on around me, or senses that are going on around me. So how could words talking about these things, ever touch into
that core trauma?
And then I found, once I realized I went straight to the core of it, that it actually didn't take that long to start feeling better from the outside in. But until then, you're always going to walk around with that hole in your soul that we use so many different things to.
Of course. Some of my clients would just cry the first half or 2/3 of their session. When they get on the phone with me, they just cry, and I just let them, and I just hold them and speak softly to them and in comforting tones, and let them just wail and sob and cry, because that's what they needed. They'd never had opportunity to cry and express that pain before in their life. So, I knew instinctively this was the way to go with them. And this lasted for weeks sometimes.
Yep. Wonderful. Sherry, thank you so much. I look forward to connecting again soon, and just thank you so much for the work that you've done in this world and for sharing it with us today.
You're welcome. It's been totally my pleasure. I'm so happy to have saved a few lives along the way.
Yeah, that's the least we can do, right?
Well, anything more than that, frosting on the cake, I figure.
Yes, definitely.
Take good care, and thanks, Alison, for this time. It's been fun.
Thank you, Sherry. Talk to you later.
Okay, bye.
Bye.